Welcome to part 8 of the build journal for Arctic Wind. And as you can see, I am still messing with the firing mechanism for the Twinshock that's converted over to rival. I put from the last video I had those little tabs that I had glued into the front of it to the hop-up. I got that together and I tested it out, and it just wasn't giving me the results that I wanted. It wasn't putting the spin on them, and it actually was making it rather inaccurate as far as consistency of the rounds coming out. So I had to go back and scrap that, take those back out, and went to plan B, plan C. I don't know where we're at on this whole thing. But what I ended up using was hot glue. And this looks a little messy on the camera, but it actually works much, much better to grab those rounds and put that right spin that I was looking to get onto it. So I did the top 3 barrels. I didn't do the bottom 2. The velocity coming out of there, I'm not getting as good a velocity coming out of the bottom barrels, and the hop up didn't make a lot of sense. The rounds weren't coming out fast enough to really have that hop up catch. I'm seeing something in the 60, 65 range FPS for the top barrels with a little bit drop off, but the bottom 2 are down 50, 45 FPS range. So that's what I'm going. This is the final configuration from the hop up. I'm going to put on the top 3 barrels. Most likely when I use the blaster, I'll probably will only use the top 3 barrels unless I'm in a really close quarter type of setup. Okay, here's the wiring setup for Arctic Wind, and there's a lot going on. I'll try to go through this and as succinctly as I can. It's coming off of an XT60. It's going to be a 3S LiPo. It's going to connect in here. It's going to sit in this battery tray that's kind of sliding off the camera. The power runs across down underneath this barrel in a wiring channel and comes down to this 21 amp Omron micro switch or mini switch right here. Then the power feeds from that. So when you click that switch, it goes to the flywheels and revs them, but it also provides power up to the normally open secondary switch, which is for the rev trigger, which runs the Caterpillar drive. Also, so the ground then comes to the normally closed on the Caterpillar drive, and the output then here runs the common back to the engine. And that way, then when you hit the rev trigger, it runs the Caterpillar, but when you release it, it breaks the Caterpillar and brings it to a quick stop, so you don't send extra rounds going out. Also, with this setup, the 21 amp Omron, the main rev trigger switch, outranks the switch or controls the power flow, if you will, to the secondary trigger switch, so that if you don't press the rev trigger, it doesn't matter if this switch is depressed. Nothing, it doesn't run the Caterpillar drive. And that keeps you from shoving rounds into your flywheels when they're not running. And I've got everything coming to a common ground here. So that is the basic function of the blaster, and it's set up the same way that the ETR-26 was, so that the rev trigger double purposes as the firing trigger for the Twinshock portion and the Caterpillar drive. So you can use, if you're revving the blaster and you hit the rev, or if you hit the rev trigger and then you pull the firing trigger on the Caterpillar drive, it'll fire rounds from the Chaos portion. But if you're primed, that trigger also fires from the Twinshock portion. So you can double action that. If you rev it, you got it primed, you can shoot, and you get rounds coming out both setups. So in addition to the power system wiring, I also have a couple of some LEDs in here, and I have a voltmeter. And up here you can see the wiring from the voltmeter, and the voltmeter is wired to the jam door. So if you open the jam door, it will then turn the voltmeter on and give you a voltage off of the battery. That's the only control there. The other mechanism here, and it's going to be a little hard to see because it's off the right side here, is I've got 4 LEDs in the very front of the blaster, 2 of them up on each side of the shell. And those are powered off of the 3S LiPo, the main battery, but they're controlled by switches that I added in here. And let's see if I can turn that so you can kind of see that a little bit better. I've got a little tiny, these I stole out of the Rapid Red that I got the other parts from in here. And so when the priming bar comes back, it will trip these switches. So when the Twinshock is primed, it will then illuminate the LED. The effect I'm looking for is, it's kind of a glow of power. I've got these things pointed downward so they don't shine directly out. So what I wanted to go for, and what I'm trying to get to with this, is when you prime that portion back, it lights up like it's powered, it's charged, giving an effect in the front. And then when you fire the Twinshock portion, the plunger rods come forward, release these switches, and the LEDs go out. So that is on when it's primed, and it is off when it's not. So this wiring comes here, the power and ground come here to the first LED through the resistor down here, and then the same thing, it goes up through, and I've got a JXT connector right in here that the wiring for the LEDs on the opposite shell go through this JST connector, and also the wiring for the voltmeter comes through that. That way I can separate the shells and completely take the whole thing apart and don't have wires in connected to the two. It gives me that ability to completely separate the shells. So anyways, this has been part 8 of the build journal for Arctic Wind. This is most likely, I believe this is going to be the last iteration of the build journal. The blaster is essentially complete once I get the thing together and put back together. A couple little touch-up pieces that I want to do. So what I'm going to do next is, once I get it together, get it tested, get everything good to go, I'll do a full overview video on this blaster. So anyways, Arctic Wind build journal. Thanks for watching.